Hello, everybody. Welcome to History Valley Podcast. Today I'm joined by Liran, and Dr. Robert and Price will be with us soon, very shortly here. So I want to go ahead and go live just a little bit early to give people time to get on. Yeah, pretty much. So yeah, the video is about the early Gnostic sects, the factionalization, the fragmentation of the Gnostics into multiple different religious sects. There's different versions of Gnosticism, like the
Oh.
Sephians, the Valentinians.
Well, I thought we were talking about pop culture.
Yeah, we'll get there, but we talked. But I remember we talked about this. We're talking about the Gnostics.
Ah, yes.
Yeah. Yep.
I was honestly shocked to see how much of actual pop culture that you wouldn't think twice about is actually influenced by Gnosticism.
Oh yeah, because and even with some strange Christian texts like the Ascension of Isaiah, like when it talks about Jesus and the levels of heaven in there, it's very fascinating. Yep.
It's fun. Trust me, guys. This is
Definitely.
gonna be a fun one. This is gonna be a fun one.
Yeah, and the thing is, there are different sects of Gnosticism that I've heard about. There's even one of them that thinks that Jesus is the serpent in the book of Genesis that tempted Adam and Eve. At least I've heard about that.
Well, at least they don't think Jesus is 550 different people.
Oh, well,
maybe it's two people.
Oh, hello, Dr. Price.
Hey, here we are, the Trinity.
What?
Yeah.
Well.
But he's talking about the three of us, of course.
Ah.
Larry, Moe, and Curly.
Ah, yes. No, it's the tank, the healer, and the damage dealer. That's a video game, Tom. That's a video game.
Oh, I stand corrected.
Okay, so we're talking about Liran wants to get into some pulp culture, including parallels between pulp culture and Gnosticism and Christianity, which I think is a fascinating topic. I want to start us off first talking about the different Gnostic sects, that they had different beliefs, like the Valentinians, the Sephians. And what fascinates me is that one of the things that we hear about them is coming from people like Irenaeus about dealing with the Simonians, thinking that Simon of Cyrene was crucified instead of Jesus, or another sect that thought Judas Iscariot was crucified instead of Jesus. And that's reflected in the Gospel of Barnabas. And we talked about the Gospel of Barnabas quite a few times before, especially with Dr. Rodney Blockers. So my curiosity about that, Dr. Price, is what I want to ask you is, what do you think caused Gnosticism to break up into all of those different beliefs? What do you think the result of that was?
Well, I think of Irenaeus in a kind of a funny statement he makes where he says that it's so important to have the verifiable historic tradition about Jesus and his teaching going back to Jesus as a historical founder, which I think already gives us the reason for historicizing an originally spiritual Jesus, because that way you could claim copyright, you might say. Oh, we got the real thing. Because what if you Gnostics got your own subjective fantasies? It's like you're playing, can you top this? And here's one crazy idea on top of another. None of them could be empirically verified. What possible reason would anyone have to think that any one version of it was correct, much less more correct than emerging orthodoxy? And in fact, you see in Nag Hammadi texts like the Apocalypse of, I can never remember whether it's the first or the second
Of James?
Apocalypse of James or the Apocryphon of James or what, but in one of them, it kind of gives a valuable glimpse into what Gnostics receiving revelations were like. It paints a picture of the disciples after the ascension, just sort of hanging around, having visions. Jesus appeared to me and he said, James, tell the rest of them this. I just think that's got to be the kind of thing Irenaeus was talking about. Brother so-and-so over here says that Jesus appeared to him. Or think of toward the end of the life of Apollonius of Tyana, where the disciples of Apollonius are hanging around together and studying, praying, etc. And there was one guy there who was a skeptic, and he says, I wish you guys were right that Apollonius had ascended to heaven, but there's no reason to believe it. I keep praying to him all the time to reveal himself, but he never does. I'm giving up on this. And then suddenly one day, everybody recoils and looks at him while he says, I forget, he's like greeting Apollonius, and he says, don't you see him? He's finally come to assure me of those things which I doubted, immortality, etc. Sure, if you say so. I mean, he's the only one that saw it. And I don't doubt that stuff like that happened, and that's what Irenaeus is talking about. And so naturally, different people differ, just like they do in charismatic groups. Well, Jesus or the Holy Ghost or whatever told me this. Well, I'm not so sure, pal, because he told me this. Oh boy, it's unverifiable, and so they naturally all stick to one guru or another, as we see in Corinth. I belong to Paul, I belong to Cephas, I belong to Christ, and so forth. It's inevitably going to happen. And so you have attempts to formulate a creed to define and, more importantly, enforce an orthodoxy of belief. So really no different than denominational schisms today.
I've heard that there are some later Gnostic sectors that decided to retract from the idea that Jesus was not the son of Yaldabaoth, and they decided, okay, Jesus actually is the son of Yaldabaoth. Now, most Gnostics don't think that, but some of them apparently did, and so they're basically backtracking from Marcion's claim that, okay, it looks like we screwed up, and Jesus is not the son of Yahweh; he's the son of a higher being. But these guys are like, actually, Marcion was wrong. Yeah, God is evil, but Jesus is God's son. So apparently there's that.
Well, there was a similar schism among the Marcionites, because some of them thought Jesus was the son of the demiurge who suddenly decided his father was wrong and decided to champion the poor creatures of his father. Which is the version Jack Kirby used for his epic in the Fantastic Four of Galactus, who he did just avowedly said, this is supposed to be God. And the Silver Surfer is his herald, who's actually a kind of a scout looking for worlds for Galactus to consume, to feed himself, and he's sent to Earth, and he's gonna say, okay, here's another one, bon appetit, but he meets humans there, and
he's Uber Eats. He's
not just garnishes for your dinner. They should be allowed to live, and he turns against Galactus to save the human race. I mean, that comes right out of the, or at least exactly parallels one type of Marcionism, and from what you say, one type of Gnosticism, apparently.
It also reminds me of that movie. I love it how we started just getting into pulp culture that quickly, because it really does it does mesh in quite nicely. I'm trying to remember the name of that movie. It's called I think it's the second film of Guardians of the Galaxy. when
Say again. I'm sorry.
Guardians
second-
of the Galaxy. Guardians of the
Guardians of
Galaxy.
the
Oh,
Galaxy,
yeah.
the second volume, when
Ego, the living planet.
yeah, his father turned out to be a living planet, and he's like he's a god. At least he's trying to portray himself as a god with his powers. He's trying to convince his son, we can remake everything together. And it kind of reminds me of that Yaldabaoth Jesus relationship in those Gnostic sects that did think that Jesus is the son of an evil god instead.
Yeah, that also is a Jack Kirby creation.
Yeah,
This guy was an amazing creator.
You really like Jack Kirby, don't you?
Oh yeah, he's like the greatest comic artist, and there are many great
Let's not go nuts.
ones.
Let's not go nuts. I mean, we all know it's Oda. His name is even like Oda, the guy who wrote One Piece, best-selling comic of all time. It's Japanese. It's not.
Oh yeah, I've heard of that. I don't know anything about it really.
You don't read any manga or nothing?
No, my daughter is a big manga fan, but I've never gotten into it.
Well, you have to read left to right. No, wait. Right to left. And, a lot of Americans say, oh, it's too difficult. I'm like, my native language is Hebrew. It fits perfectly. I don't know why you're complaining.
Yeah, I'm just too old, I guess. That appeared when I was, I had my habits set and I don't even read today's comics. I'm a huge fan of comics, but the older ones. Yeah, just a relic.
It actually reminds me of a lot of the Final Fantasy games or a lot of, the Japanese RPGs. Usually they have a plot where you need to kill a god. You literally just murder the one. It's almost comical. Like you see a god in a Japanese RPG and you're like, I'm going to kill that one eventually.
Sheesh, wow.
And usually there's some contrived subplot a la Darth Vader that you're his offspring and you gotta go kill him because you don't agree with him because you're nice.
It kind of gets me back to something else. In my first interview I did with Dr. Rodney Blackhurst, we were talking about Plato and Gnosticism, and he was saying if you look at Plato, he portrays the demiurge as a divine craftsman, basically referring to Hephaestus. And he says that Hephaestus is basically the Greek version of Ptah, the Egyptian craftsman god and creator god. He was portrayed as a demiurge deity in the Egyptian text, hieroglyphs. And in the Greek myths, Hephaestus does some evil things, like his attempted rape of Athena. But he's also an angry god that gets mad very often because the other gods make fun of him, or he's got his wife Aphrodite cheating on him with Ares, and he throws a net over them to trap them. But another point that he makes I find interesting is I found all these points to be interesting, but the most interesting point I think he makes is Hephaestus chaining Prometheus to a rock, because Zeus had Hephaestus chain Prometheus to a rock because Prometheus tried to give fire to man. So Hephaestus is viewed in this light as repressing knowledge. The net is trapping people in his divine cosmic prison, in that sense, kind of like the way the Gnostics view Yahweh. And I asked him, is this evidence that Hephaestus was, at least by the time the Gnostics come around, they're confusing him with Yahweh, and out of the syncretism between Hephaestus and Yahweh, did the combination of both of them create Yaldabaoth? And he seems to think so.
Fascinating. Wow. Yeah, I've never heard that, but it makes sense.
Yeah, there is also a Canaanite god called Kofar Wakasis. And
say that 10 times fast. Say that 10 times fast.
Well, Kofar, what's interesting is there's a particular title he was referred to as. I think it's like Hikapita, something like that, which means I probably misremembered exactly what how to say the title, but It means house of Ptah, which is interesting. So Kophar's house is identified as Ptah's house, which appears to be evidence that the Canaanites thought that Ptah and Kophar are the same god. And even in ancient Indian text, they have a divine craftsman called Vishvakarma or Vishwakarman. And he definitely is portrayed as a creator without doubt. And he creates the weapons of the gods, much like Hephaestus does, much like Kophar does.
Awesome.
And there's even a Sumerian deity called Gibel, who's a messenger of of Enlil. And he's called the god who has wisdom and knowledge and craftsmen and weapons, something like that. Especially, it says something like that in Numa Elish. He appears to be like an older version of the same craftsman weapons builder concept. There's even the Norsemen have their own version called Wayland, which Wayland is where they get it's where they came up with the idea to put a Wayland Corporation in Aliens versus Predator or the Aliens films or Wayland Yutani, which is interesting.
That's cool.
And I think that kind of goes into the allegory of the film Prometheus. Because
no, let's not get into that one. No.
Well, when in the beginning of the movie, when this alien kills himself to create human DNA, there's a Sumerian god in a very similar situation. It starts with an L, and I think it starts with an L. I can't remember the damn name for the life of me. Anyway.
Liran. Not kidding.
Yeah, he just got a Gestu. That's it.
That doesn't start with an L.
I know, I screwed up. Anyway. No. He's killed and sacrificed to make humanity. That sounds just like the beginning of the film Prometheus, which is supposed to be the prequel to the Alien films.
You know, that reminds me. Sorry, that reminds me. There is an Mesoamerican god who peels off his skin and feeds it to humans, so they can survive great famines. This is supposed to be the corn seed that Mesoamericans ate. I forgot that guy's name. It's crap, don't remember.
Even if you remembered it, how could you pronounce it?
I'm pretty talented. Dr. Price, look, I achieved the impossible. I figured out how to pronounce Cthulhu.
Oh!
Properly. And you can't pronounce it with your mouth. That's impossible. But a friend of mine is an opera singer, and when you learn to be an opera singer, they teach you to to project your voice from here, between the nose and the teeth. Now, most people project somewhere around here, and you need to get it higher. So they train them to project their voice from their nose. Now, that sounds ridiculous. How can you speak? Obviously, you can't speak from your nose, but you can't pronounce Cthulhu, and I'm going to do that just now. So,
wow.
Yeah.
Well, Lovecraft told people that you had to kind of cough and whistle to pronounce it, because it wasn't coined by people with human vocal apparatus.
Right. So let's use the human nasal apparatus.
So I wanted to
fascinating. Wow.
So I want to get back on the
I'm very proud of myself.
I want to get back on the Gnosticism. So what do you think about this cross-cultural divine craftsman creator?
Well, that's also in the Rig Veda, Purusha, the primordial man who sacrificed himself in the heavens. He was like the Adam Kadmon of the Kabbalah. And he created the gods, the castes, the scriptures, everything, and still remains a good portion of him in the heavens. And this, I think, that becomes Gaiamard in Zoroastrianism, the primordial man, and on into Yahweh as the one like a son of man, and Jesus, the cosmic Christ, and all that stuff. It seems to me to be a major biblical theme, and who knows, where? I mean, they probably got it from Zoroastrianism when after the exile. Yeah, that's very important. One other thing I just can't resist mentioning, Gardner Fox, who was probably the greatest mind behind Silver Age, Gold and Silver Age DC Comics. He created Green Lantern, The Flash, the Justice Society, later the Justice League, et cetera, et cetera. He did novels, I think 5 of them, about a Conan takeoff called Kothar of the Magic Sword. And I don't think it was a coincidence, though I've read him. I don't think there's much but the name in common. But he also created the great character of Dr. Fate, who has the helmet and amulet of Nabu, the god of fate. And in his first adventure, he goes to the netherworld to fight Nergal. And so he just, opened the faucet of ancient mythology into comics right off the bat.
Impressive. By the way, Adam Kadmon is what we call caveman in Hebrew, or like Neanderthals in Hebrew today. It's stuck around.
Huh? Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah.
I never heard of that. Fascinating.
I speak Hebrew natively, obviously.
Huh. Dr. Price. I remember asking Dr. Litwa in the past. Does he look at Marcion as a Gnostic? And he thinks that Marcion wasn't really a Gnostic. But what bothers me about that is when I read Marcion's work that we have preserved for the Church Fathers, of course, he sure sounds like a Gnostic to me. His beliefs are very similar to the Gnostics, at least. And we're even told that wasn't Marcion taught by Gnostics, supposed Gnostics that apparently preceded him, like somebody called Surdo.
Yeah, I'm not sure if we really know who he was, but yeah, that's right. The thing I think that supposedly differentiates Marcionism and Gnosticism is that they don't have secret doctrine in Marcionism, that everything was open to anybody that wanted to believe it. But I'm not all that sure, because Esnik, though later, was, I think, an Armenian heresiologist, and he claims there was a secret doctrine that they didn't share with everybody except the higher initiates. And of course, that's the essence of Gnosticism. But I don't know if he knew, if he was in a position to know that for sure or not. But that makes me think, okay, there must have been an esoteric and an exoteric version, because one of the things about Marcion was that he was an Encretite. He disapproved of marriage, but there were other people that were Docetists and Encretites that weren't particularly Gnostic. They were just fanatical ascetics.
Well, excuse me, what's an Encretite, a Docetist, and a heresiologist?
From enkreteo, self-control, denoting celibacy. So they said like in Nag Hammadi, it's very clear that in some of those writings that the original sin was sex, that God did not want, or Yaldabaoth or whatever. In Genesis, he didn't want there to be a whole darn human race. But he created Eve just to keep Adam occupied, but not sexually.
So it's like the guy who
learned from the serpent about procreation, the carnal knowledge from the tree, that really screwed everything up. So they figured, well, they say in the song, we got to get ourselves back to the garden and undo that. And so the Encretites said, no sex, even if you're already married.
What the? And what's a heresiologist?
Well, I'm sorry.
What's a heresiologist? You said that word. I don't know how many people know what that means.
Eznik, I think it was Eznik. I believe he was an Armenian.
No, what does a heresiologist mean? What does the word mean?
A heresiologist? Is that what you're asking? I'm having a little trouble hearing.
What does it mean? What does heresiologist mean?
Oh, somebody who catalogs heresies and says they're all wrong. And these guys believe this, though the Cerinthians think this.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, cataloger of heresies. That's I did. Why would he even have a word for that?
I remember in your debate with Professor Bart Ehrman, you were bringing up that there was a particular Gnostic text that was suggesting that Jesus was there at the beginning and he was like the cosmic atom, something like that. And he created the human race. I might have misunderstood what you were saying, but you were comparing him to Purusha, like you were bringing up earlier. Which sect were you talking about when you were bringing that up that believes that?
Well, the standard view on Gnosticism, I think, is that Christ was one of the ions emanated from the Godhead, and that stems from Babylonian religion, where it was really Marduk who fought the dragons and was killed and eaten, but resurrected and created the whole shebang. But I'm not sure which one. Oh, well, I guess more than likely it would have been Basilides. I'd have to verify that, but I know. I remember when I was reading about that, I thought this guy sounds so much like Isaac Luria. With the cosmic atom and all that, down to the details, and so I'm guessing it was Basilides, but I'd have to go and check back.
Could that be involved with Paul referring to Jesus as the second Adam in light of the idea that, like, where this is going is Jesus basically was Adam and he fathered mankind in the past, and it's Adam coming back to right what happened in Eden.
Well, yeah, in fact, it says as much in Romans and 1 Corinthians 15 that the first Adam brought in sin and death, but the last Adam came to bring life instead and to fix the whole thing up. And and let's see. And then in the same chapter, there is what looks like a reference to Philonic thought when it says the spiritual man comes second, the earthly first, not the other way around. Some say like the heavenly man was first and then the earthly, and he seems to say no, because the spiritual man, the heavenly man, is the resurrected Christ. But he seems to know about the idea of the heavenly Adam. And in fact, once you get to Colossians and especially Ephesians, it's very clear to me. Hugh Schoenfield was good about this in his book, Those Incredible Christians. He shows very convincingly to me that if you want to understand what's going on in Ephesians with the heavenly church and the Christ who rose to fill all things, and all things were made in him, through him, for him, sounds like the Adam Kadmon to me. So there's a lot of continuity there, and it seems, I mean, that's a little weird as to, doesn't Paul also think, as in the Philippians hymn, that Christ was the heavenly Adam? And and then the Ebionites certainly thought that, even though they hated Paul. They said Adam had been reincarnated many times, including Jesus.
These are the Edomites, right? I imagine Jesus every time before he dies, or the Adam every time before he dies, he says, "I'll be back." He said,
Say again,
"I'll
please.
be back." Okay. Every time before Adam dies, he says, "I'll be back."
Oh,
Yeah, I know.
you ever
I have
see
it
the
as a heavy
Mad
accent. And I'm trying to do
TV
a Boston accent.
spot about the Terminator going back in time to prevent the death of Jesus?
Yes,
Oh
yes.
yeah, I've seen it,
That is great.
and I've joked
That's
about that in
big
the
on this show.
past.
That's big on this show.
I've joked about that in the past when criticizing Ralph Ellis's like endless identifications of one man with Jesus after the other.
That's why
Yeah,
we say
Either
Schwarzenegger
like
back in time
Arnold Schwarzenegger is gonna have to do a lot of time traveling to make that work.
because he's the Terminator.
Yeah,
don't
Yeah.
worry, he'll be back.
over and over and over again.
Why are you making fun of my accent, Dr. Price?
Huh? Oh, just you
No,
and
no,
the
kidding.
Terminator.
No, I don't have a. You know, the part where you said about Ionia being one of the Ionians really reminded me of like the foundation myth of Lord of the Rings with the Iluvatar in creating the Aina, and I'm not saying it right.
I'm sorry, I can't quite hear you. Said reminded you of.
Lord of the Rings,
Uh-huh.
where Iluvatar, which is the creator god in the Lord of the Ring mythology, created like angels or spirits out of him that helped him create the world. That part about Jesus being an Ions?
Yeah, the
Ions?
ions.
Yeah,
You're right. Yeah.
really, really similar to Lord of the Rings in that respect.
Yeah, he must have known all about that stuff.
Yeah. Also, he based the dwarves off of Jews. People don't know that. Because they want to go back to their ancestral homeland, so he was inspired by Zionism and their beards and their language.
Fascinating. Wow.
So every time I play a dwarf in a game, I give him a Jewish accent, which is very
Ah,
easy for me because it comes naturally.
ah,
You have my axe, and also a little bit of bagels to go with it on the road. Um,
Yeah, one of my daughter's great gripes about living in North Carolina, we used to live in New Jersey, is that there's no such thing really as a bagel down here. Yeah, he had to, they were easy to find up north, but down here you got Thomas's fakery instead of bakery.
trust me, bagels are almost part of our religion at this point.
Oh, yeah, they should be.
I was addicted to bagels at one point. The thing you said about an evil god, that sounded very familiar with, again, with pop culture, with Cthulhu, which is the evilest god you could imagine. He's so evil, he doesn't even care.
Who? I didn't catch the name.
Cthulhu. You're not supposed to. It's Cthulhu.
Oh, I see. I'm sorry. I just sort of blinked out. I didn't catch it. Yeah.
No, I have
Right.
a thick accent. It's takes time.
No, it's not that. I just couldn't quite hear you.
All right. Cthulhu is an evil god per excellence. He's so evil, he doesn't even care about us. But if he would, he wouldn't be very nice, would he?
No, but Lovecraft seems to have conceived of Cthulhu and the old ones as really personification of cosmic law and natural forces that snuffed out the trilobites and the pterodactyls, and one day it'll snuff us out without knowing or caring. It's inimical to us, but without animosity, and that's so that they're beyond good and evil, which is all the more frightening in a sense, and really great stuff.
So you like Cthulhu?
Oh yeah, yeah.
I didn't know that. They're cool.
Oh yeah, I edit fiction anthologies of
Yeah, I know.
Lovecraftian
I know. Yeah.
oriented stuff. I
Yeah,
write
I know.
mythos stories and so on.
Very impressive.
That's what
Do you
my wife
think-
calls my hide side.
Do you think that the idea that Satan
Very
and
elegant.
Yahweh are the same being did that develop from people like Marcion, or even before him potentially, reading like the census of David in the Old Testament. Okay, in one version of it was God that ordered it, in another version it's Satan. And they read it like, oh, actually, what if it's the same person? And that's the reason why we have two different versions of the story. It's not, they don't contradict each other. They're talking about the same entity. And
actually, I think there's a good harmonization for that. Like, I don't go for tortured rationalizations to try to iron out contradictions, but occasionally I think if you look closer, there is a plausible one. And here, like, if you look at Job and the story in Zechariah, or where the angel of the Lord is there, and Satan is there, and they're one's the prosecutor, one's the defender for Joshua, the high priest, or the guy who's a candidate for the high priesthood. And the Satan is saying, this guy's not worthy. Look at his robe; it's stained. Obviously, his resume is not clean. There's a rap sheet on this guy. Just like today with the debates about nominee for the Supreme Court. And the angel of Yahweh says, Yahweh rebuke you, O Satan, and they purify him, just like Isaiah was purified in chapter 6 of that book. And it's like saying, yeah, you're right. The guy does have failings, but God wants him anyway. And so he's the accuser of the brethren, as they say in Revelation. And he was the accuser of Job because he doesn't want God made a fool of. He doesn't want people just sucking up to the Almighty because of the fringe benefits. And so in the original version of the census taken, it's God who says, let's see if this guy really trusts me, or if he says, oh, yeah, God's going to save us, and he's really building up his army. Let's see, because there's no notion of an omniscient God at this point, right? And so he sets him up, and, oh, I wish you hadn't done that, Dave. You're going to have to pay for it now. Well, in Chronicles, where they say Satan moved him to do it, actually, that isn't necessarily a contradiction, because these other stories make it clear Satan is the agent of God for things like this. Let's check him out. Like he's the prosecutor and the chief of sting operations. So they just inferred that if God was doing this, he would delegate it to the same guy he did with Job. So I assume that's what's taken for granted there. But there's a great story by Clark Ashton Smith. I read the whole thing on a recent Human Bible podcast. It's called Schizoid Creator, where the premise is that God and the devil are the same guy on alternate days. It's great stuff.
Wow, that's out there. I did see a game where like a god has like two aspects of their personality with two different bodies in Elden Ring. That's like a game that came out recently, co-written by the guy who wrote Game of Thrones, Martin.
Yeah,
that was. You say this stuff everywhere. I mean, yeah.
Smith wrote this, I think, in the 30s, probably. So maybe just it's a case of great minds think alike.
We have our first super chat. We have our first super chat for the stream.
Thank you.
Oh, hallelujah.
Awesome, Matt. Awesome. Thank you for $5. Could the evil creator somehow be traced to the myth of Yahweh and Leviathan, or Leviathan representing a primitive god worshipped by the Levites?
Well, that's what I think. It seems to me clear, and this is not my original speculation, that Leviathan is simply another name for Nehushtan, whom it actually says was worshipped in the Jerusalem temple with other gods, and that once they the Deuteronomic reform led to streamlining the whole thing into monotheism. It says that they kicked out, they put the bronze serpent to whom the incense had been offered, they put him out to the curb. but what was he doing there anyway? Well, they said, that was Moses' caduceus that he made to cure snake bite. Yeah, that's the ticket. It's just like in the Saturday Night Live skit where Charlton Heston was the guest host. It was hilarious. There's Rob Schneider as Edward G. Robinson as Dathan, and he's talking to the people of Israel, and he says, this guy Moses, he's been gone for 40 days. We'll never see him again. Let's start worshiping this calf. Yeah, that's it. And so they do, and then suddenly around the mountain comes Moses in all his glory with the skyscraper hairdo and everything. And he says, what is this? And he's, Moses, it's just a parade float, that's all. And the Lord God has said nothing concerning parade floats. Well, I mean, that's what they did with the bronze serpent. Oh, it's just the caduceus. And then that justified keeping it around for a while, but eventually, let's get this thing out of here. And Nehushtan, well, it's serpent with an honorific suffix, and that's exactly what Leviathan is. Same thing, just another word for serpent. And we hear in Job of those who are skilled to rouse up Leviathan. And then we have these little references about God beating Leviathan or Rahab or other dragons, just like Marduk and all these other, Baal and all these other ones. And Leviathan was just a personification of the river Lotan, and its tributaries became the heads of the dragon. And so it's clear that's what's going on. And the serpent in Eden is a kind of half demythologized version of Leviathan. And the story must originally have been told by a partisan of that god after it was deposed and forbidden. Because Nehushtan in Eden, or the serpent in Eden, is just like Prometheus, right? The creator of human beings is keeping them in the dark. He's afraid of what they can do, but the Promethean character says, look, you're being deceived here. You're not going to die if you eat that fruit. I'll tell you what will happen. Your eyes will be open and you'll be just like the gods. And it says, when the woman saw that it was good for food, wasn't poison, she wouldn't die if she ate it, and that it was good to make one wise. Well, pass me one of those. And then Yahweh says, oh my God, oh my me. That's just what I was afraid of. Now there'll be no end to it. There'll be an infinite number of them, and they have our knowledge. Let's get them the hell out of here before they eat of the tree of life and live forever, because there'll be like a population explosion among the gods now. And so I think that story was told in defense of the martyred god Nehushtan, who was reduced to the ignominious position we find him today when we step on him. But they couldn't deny like Ezekiel speaks of the Levites being demoted because of idolatry. Well, yeah, they were the priests of Leviathan, which is why they're named what they are.
No, I don't think so, because Levi means a company, escort or accompanier in Hebrew, and it was pretty much seems that they were the ones accompanying the Kohens to their duties. So it could just be because it means accompanier or escort.
Well, it could, but there are like 3 different narratives explaining the rise of the Levites, which sounds to me like it must have meant something different that they suppressed, like when they redefined Jerubbaal, for instance. That means if Baal is so tough, let him contend for himself. Whereas originally, you don't name a kid for that. No. You would name him that if you're saying, may Baal contend for him. And there's a bunch of these etymological stories. So I kind of think maybe the that he was the same as Nehushtan. But you can leave Leviathan out of it, you'd still have the Nehushtan connection.
Also, Leviathan is spelled with 2 vavs in Hebrew, and Levi is spelled with 1. So, and Levi is spelled with 1. So it's different. The writing of it is different. Just in terms of writing, it's 2. You know, vav is the one that looks like a long line, and it's spelled with 2 vavs in Hebrew usually. And which, by the way, is the modern Hebrew word for whale. Is Leviathan. Okay. But so that's late. That has nothing to do with anything. But the word for Levi is spelled differently than Leviathan is usually spelled. Also, I think in the original Old Testament, it's spelled like that.
Well, I don't know Hebrew, as I always admit.
Overrated. Overrated. Trust me.
I'm sorry?
Overrated. Trust me.
Well, I'm just going by what I've read in a bunch of books, but who knows?
Also, by the way, there's an elevator company in Israel that is called Nechustan. It makes elevators, and it's called Nechustan. Yeah, it's always funny, and the like logo is a snake. It's okay, cool. Call it whatever you want. Oh, it's a guy's family name too, which is weird, but okay, people didn't get the memo. You know, I never thought about Tan as being like, because Tan is usually, I think, means like diminutive. It means smaller. Like Yonatan. Oh, I mean, it's even in Yonatan. Let me see what else it pops out. Yonatan, Matan. It's kind of like Matan. In Matan, it's like Matana, but it means give. Ten is give. It's weird. I'm trying to think about it because it's an honorific. I never thought about that. I have to think about it.
I envy your knowledge of the sacred language.
Do you think Satan and Yahweh being the same person in early Gnostic literature played a role in the Gospel of John and Revelation? Because I know that in the past, Dr. Margaret Barker's name has come up on this channel a few times in discussions with you, and she makes the argument that I am basically convinced by, because it's just very powerful, and there's nothing contradicting it, that Jesus, at least on a divine level, is a theophany of Yahweh. And like, oh, look at that. Jesus is Lord throughout the entire New Testament. He's never the Lord's son.
Yeah.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, that's pretty tough to get around.
Oh, yeah. I don't think one can get around it. But does that suggest that somebody thought Jesus and Satan would have to be the same person too? Because in Revelation 22:16, in older manuscripts, he's called the son of Lucifer and David in Revelation 22:16. But in John 8:4, the Jews are called the sons of the devil, who was a murderer from the beginning, which seems to indicate that somebody thought Satan was probably Cain or something like that. And somewhere else in John, Jesus says that Israel is his people. And even in the Epistle of Jude, it describes the Lord or Jesus as leading a people out of Egypt, identifying him with Yahweh very clearly.
Yeah, and for instance, in I think it's First Thessalonians, where Paul says that this we say to you by the word of the Lord, that we who are alive and remain, etc., etc. Well, it doesn't necessarily mean Jesus, but unless he's identifying Jesus with Jehovah, because it's what he says there sounds like a kind of cherry-picked bunch of passages from the prophets. So he may mean, as Scripture says, but then again, by calling Jesus the Lord, he may still be retaining the identification. Whoever wrote it, I mean, as you know, I suspect it's not actually Paul anyway.
Yeah, if somebody was reading all those verses and it says we need to harmonize all of this, if all of this is true simultaneously, if Jesus is the son of Lucifer, he's the son of David, but the people of Israel are the devil's people, but also Jesus's people, but Jesus is God and God's son at the same time, the son of the Holy Spirit and Mary, God and Mary. What a mess. then we're basically saying, oh, look at this, the cosmic schizophrenia.
What's the Revelation passage again? I'm familiar with it, but I can't find it offhand.
22:16.
Say again?
22:16.
I'm not helping.
Oh, you're good, Liran. You're good.
No, I'm not helping with the fingers when I'm doing. You see this? I try to do it with the fingers, but I'm invisible.
Oh, yeah, it's because you're using
No, I love this stuff. It's so cool.
Yeah,
Look.
yeah, you're using what you need. If you had a green screen behind you, that wouldn't happen.
No, I love this. This is cool.
Oh yeah. Okay. Well, in that case.
Yeah. I, Jesus, have sent my angel to you with this testimony for the churches. I am the root and the offspring of David, the bright morning star, which becomes a name, Lucifer, but it apparently did not immediately take on sinister connotations, since a century or two later we read of a Bishop Lucifer.
Oh boy.
And they just named him after this, I guess, because not everybody saw the morning star as some sort of prototype for Satan, which he has made by midrashic rereadings of what was it, Isaiah 14, I think. Halal, the son of Shahar, the morning star. And apparently it wasn't universally thought of as...
Sachar means dawn. Sachar means dawn, by the way.
Yeah, she's
not
the
morning
dawn
star.
goddess.
Yeah, dawn. I mean, that's what it means today. It's when it's Sachar. It means, okay, at dawn.
If
morning
I take
star,
the wings of Shahar, like that apparently means the bright radiance of the about to rise sun.
I don't wake up that early.
Huh?
I don't wake up that early. Something that struck me as Marcion's anti-Semitism, and I thought, well, is that politically motivated, or was he an anti-Semite before, or did he just reach this conclusion independently and became anti-Semitic after it, or like, why is he a jerk?
Well, I'm influenced by Joseph Hoffman's book on Marcion, where he says Marcion wasn't anti-Semitic. He wasn't even anti-Judaism. He just thought that this other God, who he didn't make out to be the devil, but just sort of like an Oriental potentate, the thumbs up or thumbs down. He was a rough customer. But that he was the God who gave the law and created the world, and he will send a Messiah, much as Jews continued to expect, like a new David and so forth. He just says that's not Jesus. And the Tanakh, that is not about Jesus. It's not a Christian book. Let's not pretend it is.
Okay.
So in a way, he said, look, it's like saying that Jesus is a fulfillment of the prophecies of Hinduism. No. You can't co-opt it that way. Leave them to their religion and their religion to them. We're not going to piggyback on it. So the way he understands it, it's just more respect than bigotry.
But he's still a bigot.
Oh yeah, I don't know anything else about the guy. But
Marcion or
yeah, Marcion. I don't know enough about him other than the beliefs.
I mean, I don't know how he was personally, but his beliefs, like as Tuvia Singer said, if I'd read this, I wouldn't like Jews very much. Like, yeah. Marcion, Rabbi Tuvia was right. Marcion won out, in a sense.
Well, yeah. In fact, when I was on the show with him recently, I didn't quite get to say that back, I guess, in the 50s, probably, the Old Testament scholar John Bright wrote an interesting book called The Authority of the Old Testament, where he said that all of the official Christian approaches to the Old Testament, even among critical scholars, they're implicitly Marcionite. because in one way or another, they're saying, well, it's relevant to Christians if, and so they wind up saying it's just, we're getting the butterfly out of the cocoon or whatever it is. And he says that, and then he tries to propose a fourth view that would make the Old Testament of equal authority to Christian theology, but I don't think it works. He said, if you take the approach of the so-called biblical theology movement back in the 50s and 60s and say that it's the epic of salvation history, Heilsgeschichte, that stretches from the old through the Old and the New Testaments. But you'd never think. I mean, that's like devaluing and Christianizing the Old Testament again.
Look, Dr. Price, I'm sorry, I have to say this. The Old Testament and the New Testament are the same relation as the original Star Wars of George Lucas is to the Disney sequels. They look the same. They're nothing alike. Enough.
Right. Amen. Yeah, in fact, I'm getting to be picky like Star Trek fanatics. I love that too, where they actually will say the only canonical Star Trek are the first 2 seasons, even though Roddenberry was still in charge in the third, it went off the rails. I don't know about that, but I do feel that way with Star Wars. I sort of feel like they should have stopped after the first one. Because the second one has some good stuff in it, but it's already getting sickeningly fannish, and then just nosedive after that.
Nah, I mean, yeah, like it's kind of weird. I actually am a big fan of not as much Star Wars, but a fan of the making of Star Wars, because Star Wars is one of the most successful indie films ever made, and people don't think about it as an indie film, but it is. Like, how does a guy with American Graffiti, a movie no one ever heard of, even when it went out, manage to make the biggest movie ever? With it's amazing. I'm actually okay. So, spoilers. I like producing stuff. I want to produce I actually got interested in this topic because I was doing research for a video game, and I wanted to base it off the era of the 4th century in Judea, 4th, second century in Judea. And I thought that's interesting because nobody ever did that. I mean, we saw all the rest of the world historical sources done to that, but nothing from Bellum Udum, nothing from Jewish wars. So I wanted to get into that. So yeah, it's really cool. I had an idea where where James and Ananias are having a duel to see who is stronger in the law, and they have a magic battle, and it's awesome. Admit it, that's cool. That's cool.
Wow.
Yeah, that type of stuff. I'm into that type of stuff, but I guess I got into the scholarship of it more after. Also, if you look at Marcion at the date, depending on where you date him, anywhere you date him, Jews were seen. There was a lot of sentiment against the Jews politically for being basically like Al Qaeda or ISIS is today. I mean, they cause rebellions, they don't integrate, they start wars all the time, they burn cities, whatever. I mean, I think that Marcion's anti-Semitism and detachment of theology had to have been influenced by that. There's no way it couldn't. What do you think?
Yeah, the fact that that Christians had to whitewash dubious things that might offend Rome in the Gospels, that all, and blame it on Jews. I mean, that already presupposes that this sort of feuding thing, and to the point where we don't really know. I don't think we know what the nature or intensity of Jewish opposition to Christianity was, because in the book of Acts, for instance, the vilified, it's like Ober Ammergau, the Passion Play, Jews with horns and so on.
I left my horns in the laundry. I'm Jewish. I left my horns in the laundry, by the way. I wish I could. I don't have them on because they're in the laundry. You'll have to make do with this right now.
Yeah, that's great.
I think it's impossible. I think it's I think it's impossible to separate the politics of the time and and the sentiment of people with the development of the actual religion itself. I don't think that's something you could do.
Hmm.
And I don't think there were any Jews who would accept Christianity as is, because it's a big elbow to everything else. And it's kind of in Paul's letters. He's always talking about circumcision and kosher law and intermingling and racism or sectarianism inherent in Judaism. It's kind of in a big elbow if you don't think about it. I agree with Roman provenance and James Valiant's take on it in Creating Christ, that this is basically here to change a lot of people's minds and make them more sociable with everyone else. That's what I think.
Yeah, I'm working on a book which will sort of combine the Roman provenance theory, especially in James Valiant's version, with S.G.F. Brandon's Jesus and the Zealots books, and then trying to show that if Christianity, or let's say the Jesus movement, was originally a violent revolutionary movement like the Zealots, it's not anachronistic, then there's a great historical irony in that what they sought to accomplish but failed, installing Jesus as king, whatever, actually comes about 3 centuries later when the millennium does dawn and they have a Christian Roman Empire.
Nobody thinks that far ahead. It's just funny.
Well, they did, in the sense that they had this idea that you would have the kingdom of God, which would go on, and of course that's part of mythological delusion, but in an odd sense, possibly with historical irony, because it wasn't what they envisioned. In a sense, it was, in that they had a Christian empire that lasted for hundreds of years.
I think it would be a better direction for them to look at the caliphate, because the caliphate is way closer to what the Messianic Jews were up about than were intending than the Christian than the Roman Empire was. Because if you look at Islam is much more faithful to Judaism than Christianity is. Definitely, I mean, in all of the respects except the radical sectarianism. Because you're born a Jew, that's how you become a Jew. In 90% of the cases, it's been expanded a little, not that much. In Islam, it doesn't matter. Doesn't matter what you're born to. You can get into it. You can convert pretty easy. It's not too difficult. That's the biggest difference. But yeah. Also, I told us to. Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
Though there was, at some point in Islamic origins, the idea that, well, God had never given us Arabic speakers our own revelation. He gave the Injil to Jesus and the Torah to Moses and so forth, but we're left standing out in the cold until he gave the Quran through Muhammad, and now we've been given our rightful place in salvation history.
Yeah,
but it did, as you say, immediately open up to everybody else.
Yeah. I kind of agree with Eisenman's thesis. Well, I don't know thesis. Idea that kind of Islam is a continuation of the radical Jewish movement, and simply in hiding and with some improvements, so to speak.
Yeah, that makes sense to me.
I tell this to people, and this is something people don't believe me. The Messianic rebels, the Jews of like 2,000 years ago, are more similar today to Hamas and other terrorist organizations than they are to the modern, Jewish state of Israel, which is much more closer to the Romans. So, in a funny way, the Bellum Judaeum, the Jewish war, has lasted for so long that the original perpetrators of it switched sides. They get what I mean? Like the Jews who started it down the line became westernized and Romanized and created a modern secular democratic state who's fighting a zealous messianic cult who doesn't know the meaning of quit. It's that ironic. I mean,
that's quite true. I think
it's a 2,000-year war that had a complete side switch to it. Yeah, it's amazing how
Yeah,
long history
bravo.
goes.
I think you're right.
It's history that's going on for 2,000 years at this point. So,
Mm.
there's a joke I heard. My dad is doing humanitarian work in Ukraine. Okay, my dad is doing humanitarian stuff in Ukraine. All right, and he came to Israel, and I asked him, Dad, are you scared? And he said, Yeah, it's Ramadan soon, and Hamas can attack at any minute. Okay, not funny. Don't get it?
Must have missed something.
Okay, so dad is in Ukraine, okay? Dad in Ukraine, right? Came to Israel, I asked him, Dad, are you scared? And he said, Yeah, Hamas can attack at any minute.
Ah, boy.
Yeah, that's funny. So, history is still going, that's why I tell them, no, this isn't history as in, it's history. It happened in the past, but it's ongoing. It's here today.
Yeah.
We're living in it, which is one reason I got very much interested in history, because, well, we're stuck in it.
It's really dangerously tragic that people today, at least in our country, seem to have total historical amnesia. They have no idea what they're talking about. Like when they think, oh, everything would be better if we had communism. Do you have any idea what happened in all these communist countries? Apparently not. And so on and so on.
Well, no, I consider communism kind of like a religion in that sense. It's transcendental in a way. It's not, if you look at Hegelian, I mean, this is something I actually wanted to ask you in another time, but I'll ask it now. Do you think there's a connection between Marxism and, the Hegelianism and Marxism with Gnosticism? I do know that Hegel and Marx were part of, and Bruno Bauer were part of the same, I don't know Bruno Bauer, were part of the same Gnostic society.
Ooh, that's news to me. That's interesting.
I don't know how reliable that is. I hold it in hearsay. I hold it in passing, and I never got to confirm it. But somebody did tell it to me and said, do you think there's any basis for that, or any similarities you might pick up on, or nothing?
Well, Hegel's supposed knowledge of the flow of history and the role of the absolute spirit and all that, like, how could you really know that? I mean, it sounds like a kind of mystical doctrine.
Yeah.
And I guess he just thought, well, the evidence leans that way. But I think he also had the idea that as knowledge grows, what there is to know develops and evolves, and the whole thing sounds kind of Teilhardian to me. But I don't know enough about it. But it wouldn't. Well, I guess it would surprise me, but I could be convinced. It sounds like it could make sense. I just don't know much about that.
For a different show.
Say again?
Let's do that on a different show.
Okay, yeah. I'll look up some stuff on it.
Thanks. I do know that Bruno Bauer was, the father of Roman provenance, and he was a student of Hegel and a friend of Nietzsche, and he taught Marx Hegelianism. And he's the guy who, one of the post-Mythicists. Can you tell us a bit about Bruno Bauer? I think that's interesting.
Well, he was the sort of the grandfather of the Dutch radical critics, and he denied that Paul wrote these epistles. He said that Jesus was created by the evangelist Mark, and all the other gospels are fictitious as well. And the way out, of course, almost none of his work has been translated into English. I've read Christ and the Caesars, but and I actually have people working on translating some of his books that are more about the Gospels, but I'm mainly reliant upon Albert Schweitzer's descriptions that are pretty extensive, and he had a real great sarcastic sense of humor that I love, and I find a lot of what he says to be pretty cogent. Sometimes I think his arguments might misfire, but he pointed in the right direction, and people like W.C. von Manen, I think, came up with better arguments. But still, I think Bruno Bauer was the real pioneer. He was a contemporary of F.C. Bauer, and
Are they related?
I regard the two of them as kind of like Martin Luther and what's his name, Caspar Schwenkfeld. Schwenkfeld was a radical reformer, and he proposed that Jesus had a real body, but it was made of spiritual or stellar material somehow. And
that sounds very cool, by the way. That sounds. Could he do a Kamehameha like Goku?
Yeah, I know who he is at least.
You know Goku. Very good, very good. You're on your start. He's like Superman.
Yeah,
but more cool because he's actually interesting.
And he was originally Hanuman, wasn't he? The tailed monkey god.
Just a little, but he lost his just a little. But like no, he's more like Wukong. You know, the guy from Journey to the West, the monkey god who goes from China to India.
Oh,
Yeah, he's definitely because he has a staff that extends.
Huh.
Yeah, so he's definitely more like Wukong, which I guess are the same.
Yeah, I don't even know.
Okay. It's so fun, man. Get into it. Just watch early Dragon Ball. I promise you, you'll love it.
Derek Lambert is a huge Dragon Ball fan. My daughter is too. Yeah, I can see the appeal of it. And talk about Gnosticism, from what I gather, like Evangelion and things like that. No,
Evangelion's just trash. I'm sorry if there are any Evangelion fans in the audience. Sorry, it's not very good. I mean, it's very superficial in its Gnosticism. Like, I guess everything has to. If you want to include Gnosticism in fiction, it has to be superficial because it's so convoluted and contrived. Like. Explain Gnosticism in under a minute. I'll give you anything you want if you manage to do it. Go ahead. I'm timing it. Go ahead. Let's see if you can. Come on, let's see it.
Now, seriously?
Yeah. It's starting now.
The world was not created by a good God. Rather, everything starts with an ultimate unknowable God who emanated various divine beings from himself. And the last one in the chain, Sophia, wisdom, wasn't all that wise and wanted to have offspring. So she came up with a virginally conceived son, the demiurge or the craftsman, who thought he was the ultimate God. And he is the Hebrew God. And he created henchmen, the archons, to rule this mud pie world he had created, and managed to steal light from the heavenly world to animate his creations. And as a result, you have the human race that is sentient, but most of them are just like two-legged animals. But an elite group have a spark of the divine in them. And so the ultimate God sent a revealer like Morpheus to awaken the true spirits to their origin and destiny, and they became the Gnostics. And given this elite knowledge, they can stop being reincarnated in this vale of tears and return to the pleroma from whence ultimately they came.
That was over time by 27 seconds.
We have a super chat from Brett Forsyth.
Not bad.
Thank you for the super chat, Brett. Converse contender in the conversation.
Yeah, I put out a banner. I actually would really want to see. Sorry, go ahead.
I put out a banner. If somebody donates a certain amount of money, or someone donates on behalf of somebody else a certain amount of money, they can join. They can call in for a little bit, ask a couple of questions.
Propose that. I would actually really like to see a segment. Dr. Price explains in under a minute, and it's always over a minute. Because, come on.
Actually, at one point, I want to not right now, but another video later on. We'll schedule it after this stream. You made a very interesting comment about Paul. So there are people out there that believe Paul is just a martyr. When we were doing a show with Rabbi Tovia Singer, you brought that up. Something about Paul in Galatians arguing with like James and Cephas is like Justin Martyr arguing with, what was his name, Trypho.
Okay.
Yeah, I said that
Maybe I
that the rabbi was right, that Paul is not speaking to Jews and polemicizing against them. He's speaking to Christians, some of whom are Jews and some of whom are thinking of Judaizing, the word they used for Gentiles liking Jewish customs enough to embrace them. I mean, that was not just a religious, a Christian Jewish thing. And so this is something that what's his name? Lloyd Gaston emphasized in his terrific, fascinating book, Paul and the Torah. He says people forget that Paul is not talking to Jews, he's talking to Christians, and that sometimes has a very different implication. And a lot of things we think are statements about Judaism are not. We don't know what the implications would have been. Like one biggie, when Paul is arguing that the Torah is no longer binding on Christians, we don't really know what he thought of Jewish Christians, whether they were bound to keep the Torah or if they could skip it. He doesn't really, I think he kind of implies if you want to keep that up, it's all right, but don't tell Gentiles they have to do it. But it's never really addressed. And and I think that's because he's not talking to Jews. Hey, you Jews, you don't have to keep the law anymore. There's nothing like that. So it's not like Justin talking to Trypho. Here's our Christian view, there's your Jewish view. That's not what you have in the Pauline Epistles.
So converse contenders in the waiting room. I'm going to put them in the stream right now. Okay, converse, unmute yourself. There you go.
Hey. What's up, guys? Hey,
hello.
What's up, guys? Can you hear me?
Hey.
Yeah.
Yes.
Can you guys hear
you got some questions? Yeah.
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. I'm having a little bit of connectivity problems, I guess.
Yeah, but it looks like the audio is coming in clean.
But if you guys can hear
your
me,
face is lagging.
Go on.
Try to turn off the video.
I'll try.
Okay, now we can hear him.
I'll refresh and come back.
Okay.
You know, Dr. Price, you said something about the cycle of rebirth. I couldn't help to think that very, very similar to Buddhism.
What is? I'm sorry.
The cycle of rebirth is very similar to Buddhism.
That's right, yeah. And it's going to keep on going until you realize what's what, and you cease craving, and you abandon the ego. And
wait, is this Buddhism or is this Gnosticism, or yes to both?
Well, yeah, both are saying that in slightly different ways.
Do you think one influenced the other, or they were influenced by the same thing, or just like, it's how mystics think. Like, if you're a mystic, you're not going to like this life. You're not going to like you're going to think of reincarnation for some reason, and you're not going to like that reincarnation happened.
Hold that thought, Liran. He's back, and it looks like his connection's improved.
Woo!
Yeah.
Hey, what's up, you guys? Can you hear me?
Hey there.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, much better.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, great. So, I kind of was debating about like which part to ask about, because I have a novel view of Leviticus chapter 25 based on the Hebrew, but then also I talked to Dr. Price before about Michael Heiser's book, The Unseen Realm, and how Deuteronomy 32 relates to Psalm 82 and John 10 and all. Like, what would you guys rather talk about? Which one of those? Does it matter? Or?
Oh, you speak Hebrew? Actually,
I don't. I mean, I can barely speak a little bit of Ivrit, but I just study in in Hebrew, like using like logos and stuff like that, tools. But I'm learning Hebrew. So, do you care about which one?
Sorry,
does he? Okay.
about one of the questions is about
Which would you
Deuteronomy
guys talk about? It
32
doesn't matter.
and Psalm 82.
Leviticus.
I'm sorry.
I thought he said Leviticus.
Okay, so which
Oh.
Well, I was asking which question you guys would rather go on. Would you? I have a novel view of Leviticus 25, or we can. Okay, so you know Hebrew. I guess let's start with that one because I've talked to Price about Heiser's view before. So it's actually related as well. So when you take the only verse that you can point to for chattel slavery in Israel that seems to be is Leviticus chapter 25, I think verse 44, where it outlaws slavery amongst citizens, but it says, of the nations you may take as a bed, and they may become part of your akuzah and pass down as an inheritance to your children after you, and so forth. The term for akuzah is never used of a human other than this verse.
No, akuzah means estate. No, when they say that, he means they could be part of your estate. Now, does that mean they live on your estate, or does that mean they're considered the actual part of the property?
Yeah, so let me ask you this. That's what I'm getting to is a lot of scholars will try and say, like, well, that's going to mean that they're actually so it means landed property. That's what it means. It actually goes back to Deuteronomy 32 when God separated the nations and gave them their inheritance, right? And so the inheritance there, or the landed property that was given, in this verse, people take it as they're actually just like land. You own them as property, but God tells them in the verse, you don't own your akuzah. You are strangers in the land. I think it's verse 23. He says, so when he says you can take them as your akuzah, I think, based off my reading of other slavery passages in different other religions of the ancient Near East, that this is an adoption literature. He's saying you can take them to be part of your household and counted as citizens, as if a mail-ordered bride were to marry an American citizen. What do you think about that?
Wait, Leviticus 22, what verse?
It's 25.
Oh.
And you're talking 25. About so I believe it's verse 23 that says you can, you don't own the akuzah. God does, or you don't own the land, God does, right? But you are just mere strangers and, in the land and sojourners. He says,
I can't find it. Can you tell me the place again so I can find it, please?
Yeah, I believe Leviticus chapter 25, verse 23 is the part about the strangers where you don't own the land. And then verse 44 and 45 is the part
where... No, that doesn't speak about that. Which is the one about slavery? Oh, 25. I'm in the wrong place. Yeah. Silly me.
Yeah. 25, verse 44 and 45 says it outlaws citizen slavery. So it's like, even scholars, when they see this, even though they think it says scuttles are fine from nations, they still say this is a vast improvement because this is the only text we have that outlaws citizen slavery. But I don't even think that it's fine for the nation.
Oh, yeah, that's yeah, it says from the people around you you can buy a slave. You can buy a slave.
Mm-hmm.
It says buy a slave from them.
Right. But the question is going to be the usage of aved there.
Aved means aved is like worker. It comes from it means laborer technically, because words in Hebrew have roots, and the roots
if you look at the specialist Raymond Westbrook's books and articles on this, he'll tell you that word stands for 6 different types of slavery.
Yeah, but with an ikud, if you look at it, it means eved, which is the word for slaves. It doesn't mean oved, which means worker, because words in Hebrew have a root, and this root is, I'm going to write it down on a piece of paper. It has ein. I'm going to write it in the handwritten form. You see this?
So the king, the slave, the eved of God. right?
Ein Bet
And
Dalet,
his
which is
head
the...
chef is his Eved.
Huh?
Liran, the picture keeps disappearing because you have the virtual
Yeah.
background. You have to turn it off for a moment.
Anyways, I'm gonna... It's Ein Bet Dalet, which is the root for the word work. Like Avodah means work, Oved means worker, Eved means... But Eved means slave.
Yeah, I don't disagree. But what I'm
Okay.
saying is that the term Eved is also just means like servant, right? Like the king is the Eved of the god. His head chef is
Yeah.
his Eved. But what I'm saying is that instead of like you can take Hebrews as your Eved, right? You just can't take them
Yeah, it
as
has the Nikud.
yeah. Well, it
Okay, so
actually says here. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I'm gonna show you something with virtual background. So I'm gonna close virtual background and I'm gonna demonstrate something. So you see, this is the word Ein Bet Dalid. Now you don't know how these sound until you add what's called Nikud, which are like things you put on a letter to
It's a
change the
symbol,
sound of it. And
like a
this one,
Segal or a Hatak Bataf.
I
Something like
can't
that.
remember the names of them because I haven't known this stuff since kindergarten. But because you forget about it as you learn the language. So this is, you see those three dots at the bottom, like an inverted triangle?
Yeah, that's called a
I
Segal.
I'd have to trust you because I haven't known what these things are called since kindergarten. Basically, it's the, and a bet is usually ba, but in this context, it should have like a dot in it, so it's ve, so it's de. And worker would be oved with a line without that thing, and it would look different. So in this context, I can't think of it meaning anything else but slave.
Well, no, but servant, right? Like that's what I'm saying. Is it's the difference between
No, servant.
somebody.
There was another.
Yeah,
No,
there's like
because there was
four
another.
words.
There's
You
another
talking
word
about
for servant. The
Naar?
word
You
for
mean?
servant, just like a butler, is mesaret, because
Oh,
service
Mr.
is
Yeah.
serut, is sherut.
Well,
That means
Okay.
service.
sorry.
All right then.
So,
All right then, Covers.
wait, you wanted to ask Dr. Price, not me.
Well, I'm sorry. I'll wrap up here. But what I was going to say is that in other verses, like in Deuteronomy and in Exodus, you can take Hebrews as slaves, right? And you can actually, if they want to stay in your house, you can actually take them in, and they can become part of your akuzah if they denounce their household and join yours, and they have their ears pierced in front of the gods and so forth. But in Leviticus chapter 25, it's saying no longer can you do that, but it gets the reasoning why. Because they're allowed to go back to their landed property that they are given from Yahweh. But the nations, they weren't given landed property in Israel. So they're allowed to join your household as a servant and not be released to the Jubilee because they don't have a landed property allotted to them to go back to. Does that make sense?
Wait, let me read. It says achicha, which means your brother.
Okay.
Actually, the one in 25, no, sorry, that's 20, yeah, the one in 25, אני אדוני אליכם אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים, I God who have got you out of Egypt, I gave you this land, this land to be to you onto it. So he says, I gave you this land, the text is, אחיך עמך ונמכר לך ולא תעבוד בו עבודת עבד. So if your brother is sold to you, which means another Israelite, you're not going to work him, quote unquote, as another slave. So you'd have to work him as something else.
Yeah, because it's ruthless, right? That's the word that it used for ruthless. They're raw.
No,
or
it doesn't
whatever.
say that. No, it doesn't say that.
Read verse 45 and 46.
This is 45. 46. 1 second. וכשתעשה ויהיה עמך עד צונת ויובל וימך עמך ויצא עמך ובני אמו וישב אל משפחתו ועל... Yeah, but this is only for a Jewish slave. This is like for a guy from your tribe. This isn't just for like...
one more minute before we move on.
No, I'm done. It doesn't say that in Hebrew apparently. So, but you wanted to ask Dr. Price something, not me.
Oh no, that's fine. That's fine. This is just based off the specialists in this fields like literature or whatever. Like you can read Raymond Westbrook and you can read Caraquinho and others, but But Price, do you understand the whole allotted tribe thing from Deuteronomy chapter 32?
I'm sorry, after understand, I didn't hear what you said.
Oh, no worries. You're familiar. I know. Sorry, there's a truck. You're familiar with the allotted tribe thing from Deuteronomy 32, because we talked about it before.
Your volume is really low now.
Oh, sorry. The thing about the Deuteronomy 32, where God allots the nations their inheritance, right? You familiar with that?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, so when God he allots them their inheritance, but the tribe of Levi doesn't get an inheritance, right? Because God says, I will be their akuzah, right? But akuzah means landed property. And so anyway, I'm just saying, like, can you maybe give your perspective on what it meant, like the allotted land portions and how that relates to, their inheritance in Israel? Because, like, the tribe of Dan lost their inheritance, right? And so forth. So I'll listen off there to your answer.
Well, I think the understanding in this ancient text included in Deuteronomy, it's in poetic form, and the context is prose. It appears to be an earlier piece, and it says, ask your fathers and the elders. They'll tell you that when Elyon, the Most High, separated the peoples, he did so according to the number of the sons of God, and Yahweh's portion is his portion is Israel, and it seems to mean that at the beginning, when he divided the humanity into nations, it's like he said, well, how many am I going to need? Well, I need one for each of my sons to rule. Each one should have his own fiefdom. And so that at this point, they believe that the various gods like Dagon in Philistia and Rimmon in Syria and Baal in Canaan and so forth, each of those was a son of Elyon, the Most High God, and he had given them the land, their people, to rule, and from whom they would receive sacrifice and devotion and so on. And in the distribution, Yahweh received Israel as his people to be in charge of. And so it distinguishes between Yahweh and El Elyon, the latter being the Most High God, and the former, Yahweh, being one of the 70 sons of El. And this is why you have later in the Bible David saying, once he's chased out of Israel and he has to become I think a bandit in the service of Doeg the Edomite.
I think a mercenary.
I think I agree, because the way he was coming off about it earlier is he was reading Deuteronomy 32 as if it was God himself, Yahweh, dividing the lands, but like, no, that's not what it said.
No, I don't think so. Right?
Yeah, it was his daddy.
Yeah.
God as a father, basically, dividing the lands. God's father. It's very clear. Even there are many scholars like Marcus Smith, and he wrote a whole book about that. The origins of biblical monotheism. And it's very clear. What?
Also, by the way, just a technical term, achuzah means estate. Estate isn't landed property. Estate is just a thing you have. I mean, like, you can say, like, the press is the fifth estate. There's a saying. It's like, well, the press doesn't actually, the land, the real estate. That's real estate agents. They're a different type of scum.
Funny enough,
Not kidding.
Even in the Quran, Surah Ali Imran 3:180, it says that Allah inherited the earth. Yeah. I'm like, well, whoever wrote that read Deuteronomy. Yeah.
Wow.
I don't know. I kind of view Islam as like Judaism 2.3.0. Or
Huh.
yeah, like
With
just
Christianity kind of in the blender machine.
yeah.
To
It's
a
kind of
point.
it's kind of funny because you have like two things and they kind of go their separate ways, and you know.
Yeah, it's funny because in
Hmm.
Islam, Isa, their version of Jesus, is not Allah's son, but yet Allah was responsible for his conception miraculously.
Yeah, okay, which
So
is
what
yeah,
is
like
it? Quasi son? How's that work?
no, I mean it could be like the woman was barren and he just made her unbarren with a miracle, just a possible response. It's
Yeah,
like
but Allah was still responsible for causing that to happen. I mean, like a
well,
father.
well,
It's like somebody inseminating a female and saying, even though I didn't have intercourse with that person, I inseminated that person with my sperm. So he's not my child. I'm like that. It kind of sounds absurd in a way.
okay, yeah, that does sound. So I just thought of it like he's the one responsible for it. Like if you go to a fertility clinic and the medical person there does some kind of like medical process that fertilizes a woman, that fertilizes the fetus with like taking the little egg and putting it into whatever. It's like, well, he's responsible for the conception, but you can't say anyway he's the father. He just did the medical, or she just did the medical process. That's what I thought it means, but that's just my view on it.
Or it may just, they may have thought in terms of Arianism,
Huh?
because there are these theories of Christian roots, that the Quran reflects Christian debates, and not necessarily the roots of Christianity, but debates going on currently, and that there's
Oh yeah.
all this stuff like where Jesus says in the Quran, "If my mother and I were gods, I would have said so, but we're not." That's who thought that they were. Did Muslims think that Christians thought that? Well, were there Christians that thought something like that?
Yeah, I
Well,
mean,
you kind of think of the Nestorian controversy, where Mary is the Theotokos, the mother of God. Does that make her a god? I mean, that was part of the urgency of that debate, and that may be in view. Similarly, it says that God in the Quran, that God cast a spirit into the womb of Mary, and it doesn't say it was his, but it sounds to me like Arianism, that he was a created being,
Dr. Price,
but
what is
not a son.
Arianism? What is Arianism?
Well, it
What
sounds
is yeah? What is
Arianism is
Arianism?
the notion that Jesus was the incarnation of divine wisdom mentioned in Proverbs, who was God's first creation through whom he created everything else.
Oh, like the
And
Adam thing. Okay.
and
Like the
so that,
Adam thing. Okay.
yeah, that's right. And that it's always struck me that sounds, this thing in the Quran sounds kind of like Arianism, that he didn't beget Jesus or the Son before all worlds or anything like that, but he created him like he did all the other spirits. I mean, they're not all supposed to be part of God in Judaism, Christianity, or Islam. But Jesus is in Christianity because of the Trinity and all of that, right? That is trying to say Jesus is fully divine. But Arianism didn't believe that, and neither do the Muslims.
Well, no, they don't believe it because then they can just make Christianity look worse. Well, look kind of respectable and not respectable at the same time. It's weird. I don't know if if they're like that because it shows it, or they chose it because they wanted to treat it like that. It's very difficult to. Oh, by the way, Sufism is the Gnosticism of Islam.
Yes,
Right?
yes.
Which is kind of incredibly. It's like you can barely tell them apart. That and Kabbalah. I mean, yeah, Kabbalah is like this Gnosticism of Judaism, but not really. Kinda.
Yeah, I completely agree.
Okay. What do you think of Sufism? Just like,
It is.
how is
It
it
is.
different? How is it different from Gnosticism? Let's focus on that.
I don't know that they have a cosmic dualism. They do have
Yeah. No, sorry, go ahead. I just figured something out. I'll tell you later. Go ahead. I'll keep you in suspense.
But they certainly do have the idea of advanced knowledge that will put the knower beyond the ordinary strictures and laws, even of Islam, which is very much like the Gnostic division between the pneumatics and the Sukhoi. And to the point where Islam's distinctives don't really matter once you attain the true knowledge. And there's even an openness among some to say that the other religions could get you there too. That we're all really
That's very Baha'i, isn't it?
Yeah, and
which
very
are not
much
like by mainstream Islam at all.
A mainstream Islam
does not like Baha'ism.
Right. And Sufis got in big trouble to begin with. And I think, was it, well, Al-Ghazali, I think, was a big figure in trying to make it more orthodox so that it wouldn't be pantheistic. Because like Al-Hallaj got into big trouble by going around saying, I am the truth. And everybody thought he's saying that he is God. And he was, but he wasn't saying I'm the only one. He's a pantheist, that everybody is God, everything is God. And
oh my God, this guy is Ralph Ellis. This guy you're talking about is Ralph Ellis.
See,
because Ralph makes yeah. Not kidding. I'm sorry.
No, it's actually, I think that was a wonderful analogy. Thank you,
everybody is Jesus.
Lord of the Four Corners, for $5 super chat.
Oh, nice. Thank you.
Question for you, Dr. Price. Dr. Price, you discussed figures like Crowley and Mathers in your discussion with Dr. Blackhurst. Any other favorites? Mine is Dion Fortune.
Yeah, I don't know much about her. I know a bit more about Crowley, or except how to pronounce his name. I guess I don't know that. I know a bit more about Madame Blavatsky and Theosophy. And I find all of these people really fascinating. Of course, the most fascinating thing about the head of the Golden Dawn is how you say his name, McGregor Mathers. I love that. Whatever he taught, I don't care. It sounds so great. But all of them created esoteric syntheses from East and West, from past and present, and had different ways of connecting them all, and they're all fascinating.
Reminds me of tarot cards and the stuff you do with it. You just, on the episodes. It's fun.
Say again, I'm sorry.
Tarot cards, the cards you use to read the future, the playing cards, tarot, Tarot. Remind me of that. It's really fun. So you can make. You mentioned the good God and the bad God, and it was something I wanted to touch upon in my preparation for this. Manichaeism and the religion of money, or many, or however you want to call them. That is not Gnosticism as we think of it, but it's definitely influenced by Gnosticism, right?
Yeah, I think it's fair to say that it is a kind of Gnosticism. I guess it's how far you want to cast the net. But for instance, in Hans Jonas's book, The Gnostic Religion, his main the main groups he talks about as defining Gnosticism are the Manichaeans and the Mandeans, and they're both they're not typical Gnosticism, but they really do seem to hit all the right notes to be considered Gnosticism. And Manichaeanism became a world religion for nearly 1,000 years until it was stamped out. And it's like the Baha'is, as you mentioned.
No, the Baha'is are still around. You can see them in Haifa.
Yes.
Haifa, that's an Israeli city. Very nice.
But they had the same idea that if we're going to throw in Adam and Seth and all these guys as previous incarnations of Adam, whatever, why not do it with other religions? So that Mani called himself the apostle of Jesus Christ, but explained that he was the embodiment of the spirit that was in the Buddha, Zoroaster, and Jesus.
Wow, that's okay. That's a big claim.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. I meant to say that's a pretty big claim. Saying I'm also Buddha and Jesus and Zoroaster and who did I miss again? And Superman. And Superman. That's for good measure. Okay,
the same thing happened sort of abortively in the Ahmadiyya offshoot of Islam. Where the I can never remember his name, Ghulam, etc. They're 4 words. I cannot recall them now. He claimed to be, well, they were kind of a semi-rationalistic sect of Islam. They didn't believe Jesus was raptured instead of being crucified. They believed that he was crucified but survived it, like Paulus and Venturini and all those guys. And they believed that their founder was the second coming of Jesus and the Islamic Mahdi, the rightly guided one. And his followers accepted that and still do. But eventually he said, I'm also the return of Krishna. And they kind of hushed that up. They said, no, that's going a bit too far. But he was kind of doing the same thing. At least it's an attempt to not just ignore and write off all the other ones. Though, on the other hand, you could say it's an attempt to co-opt the other religions. But it never really works. You just wind up adding a new one to the catalog, not really uniting them.
Okay. Hey, just a question. Do you hear me better now?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, I had some issues with my microphone and I just fixed them. Thank you, Andrew Mann, in the chat for telling me there was an issue. If not, I wouldn't have fixed it. So if any of you guys have an issue, suggestions, say that 10 times fast if you're me, tell me. It's important to inform us. It's not negative.
Right.
It's great. I can hear you. Yeah.
Yeah, well, it's you can hear me, but you understand around the same because of my thick Israeli accent.
I wouldn't say so. I think it's pretty clear.
Oh, you're too kind.
I think so as well. I agree with Price.
Really? Can you explain to me what I say sometimes? Because even I don't know most of the time. Okay. There was Valentinian. Yeah, sorry. Go ahead.
No, you go ahead. It's fine.
There was Valentinian Gnosticism, which seems to be the oddest one in the mix because it's so normal, quote unquote.
Well, they believed themselves to be like the elite of the church. They didn't view themselves apparently as being an alternative to those stupid mainstream Christians. They existed in Christian congregations, and I think Irenaeus was complaining that they fit in so well, it was difficult to spot who was a Gnostic so you could get rid of them. And they said, okay, the sermons, the sacraments, all that stuff, it's like the children's sermon version of it. It's sort of true as far as it goes, but there are like the deep things of God, like it says in 1 Corinthians and so on, that we do know thanks to Paul having taught this to his secretary and disciple Theodotus, and he passed it down. So and in fact, Marcionites and Gnostics were the first Pauline Christians we actually have information about. It's not clear to me that there ever were any Corinthian and Roman Christians and all that. I think they're kind of fictive narratives in the narrative of the fictitious epistles. But these guys wrote, the Valentinians wrote the first commentaries on the Pauline Epistles. They figured they were Pauline Christians. And so they didn't have a problem with the people that weren't on their level. Hence all the stuff in First Corinthians about the weaker brethren and the stronger brethren. I think that's what that referred to. So they were good church members.
What a bunch of elitists. Sorry. What a bunch of elitists.
But we don't know that they looked down on people like the guys in the Sanhedrin in the Gospel of John. This multitude that knoweth not the law is accursed. We don't necessarily know Gnostics felt that way. I get the impression they were more like Buddhist bodhisattvas. They said, well, yes, we've done the work to be able to save those who were not so enlightened, and that's what we want to do. You didn't just say, oh, to hell with them.
Yeah, that in itself is elitist. Thinking, oh, I know everything, and I'm going to go around telling the people who don't. That's pretty elitist, if you ask me. Whether it's, pretentious or not, or, whether you're arrogant or not, it's the same. It's like, I know, you don't, you listen, you shut up, I talk. That's what I mean by that.
Don't you think you're in a position where you know a lot of things that the rank and file don't and wouldn't want to hear if you told them? I mean, that doesn't make you despise them.
Oh, no, but I mean, if you tell something to someone without motivating him, without telling him it's important, it's kind of a jerk thing to do. You know what I mean? That's what I think, at least. That's my personal opinion. Was anybody actually called themselves Gnostics? I mean, did anybody come up and say, "Oh yeah, we're Gnostics"? Or was that the thing everybody else other people called them?
Well, that's a big debate nowadays, with some people saying we ought to drop the word Gnostic because it mainly just means those heretics. But I don't think that's quite true. Bentley Layton, who's a big authority on Gnosticism, points out that there were several groups we know of who did call themselves Gnostics, but then there's plenty of other ones who didn't. They call themselves by the name of founders, like Valentinianism, Basilidianism, and so on, but their beliefs were so close that it's not misleading for us to call them Gnostics. If we keep in mind we're talking about an ideal type, and we're not saying, oh yeah, they were all alike. No, that's not true. Nobody ever thought it was. But it's so some of them apparently did call themselves Gnostics, like with the Mandeans. That name means the Gnostics, the knowers.
In what language?
In Aramaic, I believe. I think they're Aramaic speakers.
My Aramaic is pretty weak, so just
But
no,
mine's non-existent. I just read what a few words are supposed to mean.
Okay, so I live in Holon, which is a city in Israel south of Tel Aviv, really on the border of Tel Aviv, and it has one of the biggest Sumerian, did I say that right? Somroni, the good Samaritans?
Yeah.
No, Sumerians, yeah. It has one of the biggest Sumerian communities in Israel. Yeah, I think it has the biggest. Actually, just in not my neighborhood, but like a 10-minute walk, there's one of the biggest Sumerian synagogues around, and those guys speak Aramaic like you and I speak. Well, you speak English. That's not my native language, of course, but yeah,
you wouldn't know it.
I told my friends tell me I speak Hebrew, English, and Spanish, but my friends say I'm not bilingual or multilingual. I'm barely lingual. It is. I have very nice friends. Jacob, I'm hogging up the questions. Is there anything you want to ask?
Actually, I was going to say earlier, I think we're almost 2 hours in, so I think we're wrapping it up.
But it's been fun.
Yeah. Well, don't worry, we'll do this again many times. Many times. I recently Yeah, I hosted a debate recently between Daniel Unterbrink and David Mersch on like who was Jesus, and like David equates Jesus with the Samaritan, the Egyptian, and Jesus Ben Annas. He thinks all three of them are the same person. And Daniel Unterbrink, he makes the argument that Jesus is Judas the Galilean. It's like he pointed out like 30 to 40 parallels between Jesus and Judas. I'm like, okay, they both led that tax revolt against the Romans. Like, or in Luke, Jesus turns the tables of the tax collectors, and Judas does the same thing around 6 CE. But the thing is he makes the argument. Josephus never tells us when Judas was crucified, so theoretically he could have been crucified by Pilate later on. Okay. Although he says that the reign of Pontius Pilate began around AD 19 or something like that, 19 CE. I know there are arguments, very few scholars argue it, but Professor Eisman even argued that Pilate's reign is longer, that it started around 19 and ended in 37. Or 36. What do you think about that, Dr. Price? The argument for a longer reign of Pilate.
I'm not sufficiently familiar with it. I have read the Great Eisenman, but it was so long ago I don't remember that.
Eisenman.
Well, look, setting the material aside of people that make the exact people who make those claims, what would you think of the claim? What do you think of the claim anyway that Pilate reigned longer?
Well, this is. I tend to think of theories like this as saying Jesus didn't exist, but somebody did. And it's they have some plausibility. I don't think any of them are particularly compelling, and especially some of the similarities they point out. I don't know if that means that Jesus is depicted as one more of these guys, that they did, several of them did similar things, which is not unlikely, or if it means stories from these other people, these other leaders, were confused with that of Jesus. And in fact, I think maybe that's what is being condemned in the Olivet Discourse, Mark 13, when it says people will come forward saying, I am the Christ, don't listen to them. If they say, let's go out to the desert, don't. He's there. No, he's not. What is the point of that? Isn't it like you don't warn people not to do what they're already not doing? So it makes me think, are Christians confusing these guys with Jesus? Oh, this has got to be Jesus come back, right? And who knows? Maybe they encouraged it. Oh, yeah, that's me, all right. Come on and join us. Or is it that he was one of these people in particular? I don't know how you would determine that. That none of those possibilities is crazy or kooky. Right. So I'm kind of at a impasse on that.
I found Daniel Unterbrink, his argument is interesting, but I think it falls apart when somebody reads the Chronicle of Zeuxnon, because the death of Judas the Galilean is preserved in this Syriac document. I believe I told you about this before, Dr. Price. Actually, I did tell you about this before. And it says clearly in there that Judas was killed fighting the Romans near the Mount of Olives on 6 CE or 80. And I can't imagine somebody inventing that. And the document is clearly citing a much older text, likely from the 1st century, that we don't have. Joshua the Stylite, the author of the Chronicle of Zeuxnon, or at least he's claimed to have been the author, he was familiar with the Library of Edessa, which we don't have today. Maybe somebody will dig it up later. What a find that would be. Yeah, like in light of that, I don't currently find it conceivable that Judas died in another year of advanced 6 CE unless somebody tries to finds evidence that the Chronicle of Zeutonin is wrong. Now, somebody could say, well, Jacob, they got it from the Acts of the Apostles, because the Chronicle is very late. It's like, when was it written? 8th century CE. Yeah, it may be late, but I think the Chronicle is independent of Acts in this case, because Acts does not tell the reader that Judas was killed near the Mount of Olives. The Chronicle of Zeutonin does, and the information seems to be different enough that it has to be from a different source.
Yeah, I think that's sound thinking.
That's interesting.
Well, thank you for joining us, Dr. Price. It's been a very fun stream. We should definitely do this again soon.
Oh yeah, it's always great fun.
I've been
tell your friends.
Yeah, I've been thinking.
Great to make your acquaintance.
Very nice to meet you. I've seen you for years at this point, and always wanted to get to talk to you.
Oh, great.
I've been thinking I'd like to bring you on with Daniel Unterbrink. I think you two would have a fascinating discussion about the parallels. Yeah, you too, sure. Judas and Jesus and the parallels between the two. I think that would be a very fascinating discussion.
Oh my. Well, I do have to get back to work, so I guess I will take.
I mean, the action figures are not going to polish themselves, you know.
Oh yeah, neither will I, though. That's the problem.
Well, I've been trying to. I actually like miniatures. I've been trying to make my own with sculpting, but I can't find quality milliput or quality epoxy resin. This is what I got.
Well, I customize a lot of action figures, taking the professional ones as the base. I try to find one that would be the easiest to adapt.
And,
I love that.
I like Kid Bassing too. I'm more into miniatures, but I actually am looking into action figures because they seem, you get less of them, but they're more awesome. Do you have a 3D printer? Do you have a 3D printer?
I mean, let me just play Let me just play the outro for a minute to get the stream to end, and then we'll talk for a minute. Just give me a second. Hello, viewers. Thanks for watching this video from the History Valley YouTube channel. Please don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell. And if any of you wish to further support this channel, please consider checking out this channel's Patreon page and becoming a patron, and/or donate through PayPal or through Super Chat during a live stream. Thank you.